Okay, good morning, Cabinet, and good morning to everyone who's listening online. Welcome to the Extraordinary Council Cabinet meeting of the 20th of November 2025. We'll just start with apologies, please.
Just apologies from Councillor Martin and Councillor Kozlowski, and Councillor Chambers is on our way in.
Thank you very much, Craig. Do we have any late items?
None, Chair.
Receipt of petitions?
There's no receipt of petitions for this meeting, no.
Identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply?
None.
And any declarations of interest? None. Okay, thank you very much. We move straight to the key decision, which is the approval of proposal for local government reorganisation. Now,
excuse me, Chair, sorry. Sorry, thank you, Chair. Given the content of the business and the agenda today, I think it would be appropriate for me to grant to you as members of Cabinet a general dispensation for the duration of the meeting from the restrictions of section 31(4)(a) and (b) of the Localism Act to allow you to participate and in discussions and vote on the item on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you for covering us there, Emily. Okay, so the key decision is the approval of proposal for local government reorganisation. I don't have any papers or speeches prepared because I've been living and breathing this since January this year. Myself and the Chief Executive have been deeply involved in this decision and to come to this point today. As we know, it began at the end of 2024 when the government indicated that this was coming down the line, and we were asked in January to prepare our case. From January to now has been a very, very intense process, and I can assure everybody, both in the chamber and in the public, that no stone has been left unturned, that we've taken this whole process extremely seriously, and that we've really covered every eventuality and every option available to us. We began working together very, very quickly, and it's been very fast moving. From the period of January to March, we met with all of the leaders of the various boroughs and district councils of Derbyshire. Unfortunately, at that point, it became apparent to us that the county council at that point was going in a different direction to us. They laid out that they wanted, at that moment in time, to keep their footprint of the county and to keep Derby donutted as the second unitary. Now, we know that that's been a relationship and an imbalance for a very long time, and it's not something that has worked, certainly not for the city, for a very long time. It doesn't help for us to be donutted because it restricts our boundaries, and as a city, we've not been able to grow and expand. We're running out of housing space and land, and that means that housing has to be built on our borders. That means that we get all of the infrastructure pressures, but we get none of the council tax in order to cover the costs of those. So you can see how we've been struggling as a unitary because of that donut and that chokehold around us. So we knew very, very quickly that that wasn't an option for us, which meant that the remaining district and borough councils and our unitary began working together to look at all of the different options. The first time that we met with KPMG, who have assisted us on this journey, we were presented with about 16 or so options, I would say, some of which we were very, very quickly able to say, no, that's not going to work. Some of them were split into 3 or 4, and some of them were very, very disproportionate. We quickly were able to narrow that down to various different options and in order to explore them more deeply. What we came to full council with in March was some variations of 2 unitary authorities, which allowed us to look at the balance between the north and the south of our county. I won't go over the history of all of that and what happened, but we know that as Unitary Council, we weren't able to put forward a recommendation at that point. So the Chief Executive and I continued forward from that point with our discussions with the districts and boroughs, and we continue to work up in far more detail and look into all of those options. By the time we came to a decision point on going to public consultation, as I recall it, we were in a meeting with all of the districts and boroughs, and Amber Valley in particular presented us with a third option, which we'd been discussing, which was whether a split would happen in Amber Valley. And of course, that's a very, very difficult thing for any authority to have to contemplate. But Amber Valley did respond to it, understanding that the pressures from our council and our opposition had requested that we looked further into that. And that's exactly what we did. However, when we got to the consultation meeting and we needed to approve that, because of the fast-moving pace, the version that Amber Valley brought back and the line that was drawn at that point was not one that sat comfortably with us as the city. It didn't really give us much growth space for starters. And there was I spoke out at that meeting and actually indicated that I wanted us to be able to revisit that line, but due to the time pressures, accepting that version had to go to consultation. So that's what happened. We went to consultation. It was a very good response, really, in terms of consultations. 7,000 odd respondees, which I believe is a record for Derbyshire, certainly. It was more than the consultation on MCA several years ago. The next stage was to move forward and finalise our, see if between us, the boroughs and the districts and us as the unitary could come to an understanding of one decision. Now, if we had been able to have done that, it would have been probably quite remarkable and quite unique, because as I see the rest of the country going through this process, there's a lot of fallouts, there's a lot of to and froing, there's certainly a lot of disagreement, and I'm not sure that any single county has been able to come to an understanding over one single option. So I do have to comment that throughout this entire process, we have all worked really, really well together. I do commend all of the leaders of the districts and boroughs. We've always acted with the utmost respect, even when we've disagreed. And it's been a very intense process, but one that has shown that how seriously and how responsibly we all take our roles, because we've done nothing but try and do the best for our areas, for our communities, and for our county. And of course, trying to do the best for the future two unitaries as well. So we come to the part where I readdressed the drawing of that line, and we, the Chief Executive and I, consulted with our planning officers to look at where our growth potential was. And that's how we came up with the suggested B1 option, which was then put to KPMG to analyse further. And remarkably, when the analysis came back for that option, it actually was the strongest option of all of the ones that we had previously been looking at. Strongest in terms of population split, it's almost identical, it's within a few hundred. Strongest within GVA, which really gives both unitaries the optimal opportunity to thrive, and that is part of the criteria from government that we can't set up these unitaries to fail. They have to be financially sustainable. And the other way in which it was perfectly balanced was in terms of council tax. So, we know that from the get-go, these two unitaries have the absolute best opportunity to thrive, to be able to be absolutely classed as equal. And that was really, really important to us, because we've experienced for far too long the inequality of the two upper tier councils in Derbyshire. And so with that, we've taken the options to full council, and full council approved the option of B1, and that's where we are today. Because of the intensity of the time that we've spent on this, I'd like to hand over to Paul to also add his thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You've covered off that really well, and I mean, I don't have a huge amount to add. As you've said, there's been a significant amount of work that's gone into this over the course of the last 7-8 months. I want to pay tribute to my officer colleagues, obviously, leaders, yourself. Also thank Heather for the tremendous amount of work that she's put into this. And we've got to a place, I think, where, as you've just alluded to, the option on the table is a pragmatic, sensible proposition that takes into account the government's criteria, particularly around population, particularly around tax base. And from my perspective, the most important thing is creating 2 new local authorities that can serve their local populations to the best of their ability in terms of financial sustainability and providing good quality public services, because that's what they're there to do. Evidently, it will now be down to the government to determine next steps, assuming that Cabinet approve the decision today. We will collaborate with our district and borough colleagues to submit the proposal to government to be signed off by respective leaders, and we will then await the feedback. I think it is worth just saying to just for Cabinet's information, we have had some preliminary feedback on the proposal as it stands, and I guess the main thrust of that is because we now have effectively 4 options that are supported by different authorities. The government have asked us to submit 4 separate proposals. And that was, I guess, a bit of a divergence from where we were in terms of the collaboration. But of course, we have that doesn't get us away from the fact that actually there's been a significant amount, as the leader has said, a significant amount of collaboration to this point. And these things are never easy. There is a huge amount of history at stake here, a huge amount of, and of course, a huge amount of work to do. I mean, this is just the first stage. Actually, the really hard work will start once the submission has been made, and there will be a significant amount of work for us to do to work with our district and borough colleagues, and importantly, of course, the county council. And as the leader alluded to earlier, at this point in time, there hasn't been a huge amount of work with the county council. The only way in which local government reorganisation will succeed in Derby and Derbyshire is the effective collaboration with the county council. It's the biggest organisation, has the biggest budget, it's got the most staff, etc., etc., etc. So for it to succeed, we need their active engagement in that process. And I'm sure there will be conversations with the new executive leadership, from my perspective, at the county council in the coming days and weeks, to ensure that we can take forward that collaboration and ensure that we get the right outcome for the people of Derby and Derbyshire.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. There's just 2 other things that I wanted to highlight to Cabinet. The first is that option B1 has also been supported by Erewash, by Chesterfield and by High Peak. And then add to that South Derbyshire has supported option B, then that makes the Southern Unitary actually clearly coming out in favour of giving the city that space to grow. That's the key thing. And obviously option B means that all of Amber Valley comes south. I think we recognised that that doesn't really sit in terms of how communities feel that they relate, and then certainly not in terms of their travel experiences. So part of the analysis that KPMG did was to look at, travel routes, and it was very clear to us, and you can see this in the document, that areas like Belper and that sort of lower end of Amber Valley are very much coming down to the city. They're going across to Erewash or to Nottingham. They're much more commuting to the south and to the southeast. Whereas when you start to look at more like Ripley and areas more to the north of Amber Valley, they're very much going up to Chesterfield, they're going up to the northeast and so on, or over to the peaks. So, we took that into consideration. That very much also played a part of where that line was drawn. If this was about how much land we could get, then we'd have been supporting option B as well. But, we're very, very clearly trying to do the best for communities, not just for the city. Of course, we're primarily concerned about the city, but we do have to think about the bigger picture and that whole Southern Unitary, what it looks like, what it feels like. And the beauty of option B1 is that actually it carves a natural sort of a green wedge, a gap and space between the northern and the southern unitary, so that we can together, working together in collaboration, we can absolutely agree and understand that the two won't merge. We won't end up with this similar problem that we have right now, where we've got housing being built on boundaries. Actually, if you've got a natural buffer zone, then that's a perfect solution, and the two are going to survive in harmony together. The second thing that I wanted to flag is that at Appendix D, we have included the minutes of the extraordinary executive scrutiny meeting. And I wanted to flag that again to give the reassurance to the rest of the council, and especially to the executive scrutiny and the chair, that we have taken on board their recommendation to include in our proposal and in our recommendation that option that they discussed at executive scrutiny, which was in the interim period to include more councillors where there is an imbalance of population per councillor. We're aware of how much work we do in the city, and sometimes there are pressures on us because of the inner city wards and additional things that we're dealing with that isn't just about the number of people, but it's about the depth of the issues. But when you're looking at the numbers per councillor, there is quite a bit of disproportionality, and so if in the interim, until wards are redrawn and re-looked at, it's our recommendation that there is a certain amount of wards that may need to continue with 3 councillors, just to be able to cope with that workload and to ensure that we can serve the community properly. So that has been included in the report. So with that, I will hand over to you, Cabinet, to see if you have any questions or thoughts or comments. Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Chair. And can I first of all thank both yourself and the Chief Executive in the work that you've done. The intense, as you say, the intense work that you've done in terms of getting to the point where you have got it to present a proposal which, in terms of where we are, is trying to take into account not just the interests of the City of Derby, but the other districts and the communities, as you just said, in terms of option B as the base and B1 being an option which looks at the geography, looks at the communities, and looks at how connectivity can matter and can make a difference. Of course, there's a lot more work to be done, and we need to sort of be mindful of that. And it's good that the consultation process, the engagement, was so positive and the highest. There's been many consultations across the county, and those sort of numbers have never been reached before. So there is interest from the public, and they've given their views, and depending on how you interpret them, some of them support where we are, and some others can interpret them in a different way. But that's part of the process, and our job is a responsibility to make sure that we put forward the best option. And I think you've articulated that quite well in terms of how we've got to where we are. And it's really pleasing that our exec scrutiny, which I understand took a good, serious, intense look at the options and asked searching questions, but in the end came to the conclusion that B1 is the best option for the city and for the communities that will be part of the two unitaries, which are sort of, the boundaries may differ where they may be, but there'll be two unitaries for Derbyshire to represent the people of Derbyshire, and hopefully to provide and continue to provide good services and use a good practice from wherever it is to make the standards reach to the highest level rather than the lowest level. And I think that's going to be an important debate and discussion that we have to have in terms of how we make the new unitaries, particularly the one that Derby City will be part of, the most effective and learn from the good practice across the piece. So, I mean, I think it's important to note that the disappointment I personally feel, I'm sure we all do, that the Conservative group and the Independents decided to not contribute in sort of the decision making, or they have done by not making a contribution. That's disappointing, because I think we need the input of all our elected members so that we can reflect what the position is. But that is as it is. The council voted for B1, which is another strong position. I think the message that the government, which finally makes the decision, needs to take into account that we finally have a position from Derby City which we've not been able to provide in the past because of the difficulties we've had in terms of being a minority administration. So it's been a hard but speedy journey to get to the point where we are, and as both of you have said, it's only just beginning. And with that in mind, I mean, one of the things you've, Chair, have charged me to do is look at the implications of local government reorganisation and how that plays out from here onwards. And that as the Chief Executive said, that needs to begin immediately, and it has already begun way before now, in terms of making the preparations, because it is a massive, massive job. The logistics are, not being done before. There has been experience, and Derby City has that experience as a unitary, because 1997, and some of us were still around at that time, was the last time when there was a reorganisation where the county council's upper tier responsibilities and at that time Derby City district's lower tier responsibility had to be brought together. And that was a massive operational exercise and logistical exercise. And there was lots of debate, negotiations about properties and budgets and deficits and so on. And that would be played out doubly or, well, fourfold in this occasion. So I think there's a really important thing to do. And so from my perspective, in the role of local government reorganisation portfolio lead, but also from my own portfolio of AI and automation and organisational transformation, it's important that some of the things start. And I know already that our achievements in being AI, the only local authority which has done an all-out AI implementation of seeking the advantages of savings, efficiencies, and providing better services, which has been noted not just in the region, but across the country. And I know the Chief Executive and our Director of Digital Activity has been up and down the country demonstrating how we've done that. So we are in a good position to offer that experience and leadership in terms of how we can deliver and land the logistical challenges that we'll be facing, not just the southern Derbyshire Unitary Authority, but also the north. Because I know we already have been identified to actually lead on behalf of all the districts. We're still working with the county, I think, sort of reach out to the county to see how we can actually engage with them as well, because as you've said, they hold the largest amount of resource, workforce, and so on. We need to engage with them, so hopefully we can reach out to them to do that as well quickly. But just the simple bit of digital connectivity and having the same platforms, that is going to take many months, if not years. And the quicker we start, the better. And that's something that we will be pushing. And I know the Chief Executive and the Director have been doing that. But I think we need to get that political engagement going as well. And so, you know, we need to look at the future and hope that the government considers all the positives that you've just identified and which has been part of the engagement process in terms of how B1 is the option which can get us the most effective balance in terms of, as you just said, in terms of the population and then the sort of the council base and also the GVA and all the other elements which make up, and then the community connectivity as far as you can in a situation where you're going to such a wider place. So I'm happy to support B1 and to say that it's been a long journey to get here, but it's only just begun.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dinser. Councillor Swan.
Yeah, I dare say the work's only just begun, really, despite everything that's been undertaken so far. But yeah, a huge thank you to all the leaders and all the officers who have helped us get to this point. We've talked about, I think you touched on it, Nadine, about travel and about integrated travel and how our residents move through boundaries. And I think this particular B1 is a real opportunity for us to think about long-term strategic planning. It's a challenge when we're doing something in Derby City and we've got a cycle lane that ends on a boundary, or that I'd like to think that we have an extremely good record of fixing our roads in Derby City, and then as soon as you leave the boundary, you are met with a series of potholes. So I think that our residents will see that connectivity planning and future development will be beneficial long term. That also includes things like bus services, integrated bus services. Again, disproportionate when you've got some challenges with regards to buses stopping at certain locations or stopping in the evening or different costs associated with providing active bus services. So, you know, there is a real opportunity here. And I always think that change is difficult. And I think it's our job to make sure that we are helping people to understand what those changes are in terms of opportunities and not threats to our identity. Because our identity will always be there. And fundamentally, let's hope that it will produce better integrated services. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thanks to Paul, Heather, and all the officers involved in the work they've carried on. And obviously, you've been a lone ranger in this because you've had to deal with 15, 20 people and just come and tell us what's been discussed. So, in particular, thanks to you as well. You know, Councillor Dinser mentioned the opposition, and I don't really want to mention them because they're not here. For the last 18 months, and in particular during this process, all they've done is hinder us, oppose us, without actually putting a viable proposition forward for us to discuss. I mean, we saw in the last meeting that after half an hour of hot air, they just walked out when it mattered, right? So I think the less said about them, the better. In terms of the option B one, it goes without saying that if you look at it from population-wise, council tax-wise, etc., it is the most suitable for all of us. And we as a city will retain our identity, and others will look to us because we have the experience in dealing with day-to-day affairs that they haven't. Our problems are far greater than theirs. We have encountered them over years since we, split up from Matlock. So our councillors know how to deal with issues that are affecting everyday people and everyday lives. So I think from all angles, everyone will benefit from that B1 option. It's not something, as you said in your opening remark, it's not something that's been taken lightly. It's been worked over the last 7 months, and a couple of other authorities have expressed preference to this as well. Without having to sort of read all the spiel that was been written for me from officers, and I thank them about the benefits of this, I can just say off the hand that in terms of housing, we will benefit, obviously, because it gives us a chance to grow out of our boundaries. Currently, the housing that's being built in South East Derbyshire, etc., although they collect the council tax, the infrastructure pressure is on us. We have to provide education facilities. We have to look at doctors, dentists, etc. So that will at least give us some chance to use the council tax towards that. So in every way, we will benefit from them. They will benefit from us. Our expertise is far greater than theirs. They will hopefully use our expertise, work with us, and it will be betterment for almost 500,000 people. Currently, we know the limitations that we have in terms of our growth. We have to rely on neighbouring authorities for our housing needs. Hopefully this will go a long way towards settling that and giving us the chance to build the required houses and also retain the green space that is very vital to the people's everyday life in terms of health, etc., clean air. So yes, I absolutely support this, and I thank all the officers again and you for all the hard work you've done.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Nwaha.
Thank you, Chair. Just starting off from where Councillor Khan left off, first of all, it's me to thank yourself and the officers for the hard work that's gone into this. Now and then I meet a few residents who either want to talk about school placement for their kids or talk about waste collection, and although they're just one street away from Derby and they can't understand why they can't talk to the council here, I've had to explain to them that, no, look, we're separate authorities. But with this LG, with this proposal, should it go ahead, we are not just merging the capabilities of different authorities, of which there are many, but what we're also doing is that important thing of merging communities who, although live next door to each other, find that they're different. This brings together those strengths, helps us harness our strengths, but also helps us to redefine the meaning of our communities as well. We have people who live here and work in South Derbyshire, for instance, or vice versa. And this is also an opportunity to say, yes, we're formalizing what you've been going through for as long as you've been here. But other than that, looking at also the strengths and what we can borrow from, say, the counties and other authorities in terms of waste collection, waste disposal, in terms of especially the grassland management. We can borrow, I believe, as a city, some of their expertise in grassland management, as they can borrow our expertise in waste management. So it is a win-win, but I would say more than just for the services, for the communities.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazelgrave?
Thank you, Chair. I think the merits of B1 are eminently clear, and I support the recommendations. I just want to talk a little bit about the whole aspect of what the implications will be for children, young people and skills in the reorganisation. I remember when I first went to the EMCA first meetings where we all got together, and one of the things was think big, and that's something we all need to start doing. It's not as big as EMCA, but it's a quarter of EMCA, and it's a really important partner which will be really supportive in terms of all sorts of things we want to do in the children and young people space. We are the only unitary authority in any setup, really, whatever the government decides. And we already work at a strategic level on children's services with Derbyshire. And Paul and I have been at meetings, and Andy Smith is there as well, and we actually make sure we're in harmony and making sure we're following legislation, preparing for new legislation that we know will come into, and making sure that our children and young people, particularly our looked after children, are safe. As a unitary authority, we have a really excellent team, an outstanding team of officers, both on the social services side and also on the education side and learning. And that's adult learning as well, and skills. We have an outstanding Ofsted judgment for ILACs, and more recently, and that was across all 4 areas, by the way, and the Youth Justice Partnership, which was judged to be outstanding again in all areas by His Majesty's Inspector of Probationary Services. One of the things that will happen is that we will incorporate into the new authority, which will obviously be larger than Derby, any maintained schools that were formerly in Derbyshire. And I know also that the government is keen to extend the amount of involvement academies need to have with their authority, because our authority still has responsibility for all outcomes. And when we can't have them working we're doing our own thing, we're not a county school, we're not a unitary authority school, we need to have that merged more closely, and that's in the interests of our children, which should always be child-centred. So we will accumulate more maintained schools in a larger authority. And the Derby Promise, which of course is something which is of note to many people, EMCA wants to replicate that across the whole of its footprint in maybe not exactly the same form, but certainly it will be the key principles of Derby Promise will be rolled out across EMCA. Ofsted commented on how really valuable they thought the Derby Promise is in terms of a longitudinal approach to improving outcomes for children. And I think that's going to be a real strength of the new authority. It won't be called the Derby Promise anymore, but the central mission of it will certainly always have that history. Children's homes, we will become, or the new authority will become corporate parents of all children's homes housing our children, of which we are corporate parents, so that a bigger footprint for that. And a bigger range, but hopefully we'll always be able to house our looked after children close to home where that is appropriate. On SEND, I think there is a clear broken system that we're trying to operate in terms of SEND. The government recognises that and is introducing changes. We are getting ready for that, and we're in a good place. We will just need to make sure that we work collaboratively with all new staff coming in and with the professionalism of our own staff, and I'm sure the staff are mirrored in the Derbyshire Authority, that will lead to good outcomes. Fostering, again, we will become corporate, the new authority will become corporate parents of all the children fostered, and we have the overarching organisation Foster for East Midlands, so that will continue, although there will be a new organisation coming in about fostering, which are fostering cooperatives, but that's in the pipeline and we're ready for that and clear about it. I really think it's a great chance for the youth offer across the footprint of the new authority to be really vibrant and inclusive and make sure that there are issues about transport, which I'll come on to in a minute. The rural dimension will mean that the new authority will need to grapple and take seriously the issues of transport to school, but particularly access to further education colleges, and that they are inclusive for SEND pupils and pupils with the AHCPs. So access to sixth forms, easy access, will reduce the possibility of needs. So that's a central issue of the government as well, and quite rightly. So skills as well for adults and 18 plus. We have a burgeoning DALS, Derby Adult Learning Service, which obviously works very closely with EMCA and works as an agent for them in terms of the thrust for EMCA in terms of skills and employment. So finally, I just want to say that in any change like this, there are risks, but I think the professionalism of our officers, mirrored by the professionalism of new officers that will come into the authority, will make this an opportunity to become a real kind of ideal place to grow up in Britain, and it will, because they will put children and young people at the centre of all the effort and change to make a really good offer for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hesselgrave. I'm just going to correct your terminology ever so slightly, if you don't mind me, sir. Beg your pardon, Mr. Teacher, sir. But actually, we need to stop thinking about this as being new staff coming in, because Derby City Council won't exist. Everyone will be new staff in a new authority, and I certainly don't want us to give the impression that, you know, this is a growing of Derby City Council. It certainly isn't. But what has been highlighted by Councillor Carnan and Waha especially was about the benefits, about those merging capabilities that you talked about, and it's the opportunity to take the best practice of all, the collective. And yes, we do lots of things really, really well, but there's many, many things that we can learn from as well. And, you know, we had a great ignition event that we all attended in the middle of the year, where we were exploring the art of the possible. And that was really exciting because it allowed us to forget what we do now and actually look at things in a new way and reimagine our services and really set our standards at really, really high and say, you know, what do we want to achieve from this? What is the art of the possible? And you know, it's a once maybe twice in a lifetime opportunity to really, really start again and take all of the best bits and say, well, if we were doing this again, we'd do it differently. We'd do this. We'd break down those silos and we'd have more partnership working, and you know, and we would set the highest standards. And one of the things that we all expressed a desire for was the kind of the feeling of this service is good enough for my family, which means, you know, it's good enough for me, it's good enough for my family, which means it's good enough for everybody, which, you know, it's not just, okay, here's a level of service that's acceptable. It's actually, you know, I want the best for me, I want the best for my family, and if it's good enough for me, you know, it's good enough for everybody, it's good enough to share for everybody out there, and that was a real aspiration. So, thank you for all your contributions. No problem at all, no problem. It's been a very chilly morning. So if there is nothing further from anybody, I'll move to the recommendations that are 2.1 to 2.2. Because of the momentous occasion, I will read the recommendations out. To approve the proposal for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire and to submit to the Minister of State on or before the 28th of November 2025, with option B as the base case, supported by modification B1 as the preferred boundary option. And 2.2 is to delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to make any minor or technical amendments to the proposal prior to its submission to the Minister of State on the 28th of November 2025. And also I want to note that we are accepting the recommendation from executive scrutiny. So if we could minute that, please, Craig. Thank you very much. Are we all agreed? Thank you very, very much, Cabinet. And thank you for your time this morning, everybody. Thank you for all of the hard work so far. Good morning.